2022 is ending, and I wanted to recap the year in watches that we had and some of my favorite or highlights, I guess, out of that year. And there were a lot of interesting and different moments out of this year, but you can see a wave of GMTs as the main theme behind a lot of these. But there was some affordable stuff too that I think is going to change how people see a lot of these other different brands. So I want to walk through some of the highlights of 2022, and these are not chronological, but some of the highlights that were big points for the watch community in general and the watch world. The Moonswatch hit, and that lit the whole watch world on fire. I swear there were so many people that weren't into watches that suddenly were or talked about them, and I thought that was really cool. It was something we'd never seen before. We had the Vacheron 222 come out. We had Omega create a Grandmaster chime complication where the Speedmaster chrono was actually the one that was making the sounds. Normally those chiming watches are sounding out the time rather than the chrono function, so that was really sweet. The GMT was seen really early in the year through Longines' Spirit Zulu time, Tudor coming out with another with the Black Bay Pro, Grand Seiko came out with the GMT, and then Tudor continued that streak of coming out with new watches with the Ranger and their steel and gold models, and then the Tudor Pelagos 39, which, as you know, I'm a huge fan of. IWC started going in-house with their Mark 20. Nevada Grenchen started making waves as a brand that I didn't know anything about before the start of this year, but now seems to be popping up every 2 seconds on my feed. Rolex came out with not one, but 2 deep sea models, with the second one being even bigger than the last one. Furlan Mari blazed on the scene and then stamped it with an automatic watch with a large pre-order period. Grand Seiko's White Birch got a spring drive versus the automatic. Dave Portnoy started a watch brand that we just talked about called Brick Watch Company. Richard Mille came out with a watch that was just a bit thinner than the one before it. The Apple Watch got an upgrade given that it looked the same for the last however many years, and now finally it had a slightly different case and a little bit bigger case size with a titanium case. Rolex also did another update on their GMTs by making it a left-hand model, which looks very strange to me in person. Omega came out with new release after new release, with the Speedmaster 57 being a favorite of a lot of people that are looking at the Omega catalog these days. Baltic came out with new releases, including a chrono, a mechanical chronograph function, utilizing the Sellita SW500 that people seem to now want to use in a lot of these different micro brands. GMTs not only were big on the main scale with the Rolex and the Tudor and the Longines, but also big on the affordable scale with Seiko's Seiko 5 GMT. Not only that, but true GMTs now have an affordable movement that is going to start making waves in the micro brand world that I'm already starting to see with the Miyota 9075. Cartier made a movement inside of a rotor utilizing sapphire pieces. Grand Seiko also came out with a watch called the Kodo, which was a constant force tourbillon, which is so beyond complicated that I really can't describe it in a short sentence. Nomos continued to make new releases, honing in on a sportier version of their classic dress line. The Patek Calatrava became suddenly a tool watch. A watch company called Block started making watches very functional and the bezel very useful for children. And one of the big stars of 2022 had to have been colorful dials, with the Oyster Perpetuals going for way inflated prices beyond what they were worth. Zinn coming out with colorful dials for their most tool-focused watch in the 556. Omega had their Aquaterra line revamped with all new colorful dials. Breitling revamped their Navi timer with a whole array of colorful dials. And now Nomos has a similar line that's now all colorful dials as well. It seemed that that was a huge theme of this year, was making things colorful and fun, which I thought was really nice. It's something you don't talk about or see a lot in the watch world, but this year it seemed like that was a major focus. It wasn't just blue or green like it was in prior years. Now it is colors. We want bright, vibrant colors. Now, I don't wear those, but that seemed to be a big theme of this year. Now, of that whole array of watches that came out this year, the ones that really stood out to me were the ones that most people thought combined both a design flavor and a lot of function and form to them. Now, while some of these I can't actually comment on, like the Omega Grandmaster Chime, or even their Aquaterra line because I haven't been able to try them on, I think there's a lot of these that I have tried on that I think are going to be continually talked about for the next several years. The main example of that is the Moonswatch. I think of this entire year, the watch release that stands out the most has to be that, because it is so affordable. I think most people look at the affordable line as basically what most people buy, because people that aren't in the watch world go out and they buy a watch because they want to buy a watch, and they may spend several $100s on it, and that's a lot of money for a watch for people that aren't in this world. And what I like about that Moonswatch is it's getting people to consider a different thing. They're not just going to buy the MVMT, they're not just going to buy the Michael Kors or some of these other fashion watches. They're going to start looking at actual watch brands, and I think it may help switch or push a lot of those people into looking at brands like Hamilton or Longines or even Vintage Omega that are going to be somewhere around a similar price scale, but going to give them a different offering. And I think it's a nice stepping stone. It's a nice hand reached out by Omega to bring people into the fold. And so that's what I like about it, because I like sharing this passion. I like meeting people and getting them into it. If someone says, hey, I'm looking at buying a watch, I will be on them talking about it because it's fun for me. And so I think that's what I like about the Moonswatch. It feels like a welcoming gesture for a lot of people that aren't going to buy a $5,000 Omega Speedmaster. I think everyone knows that the Tudor Pelagos 39 is by far my favorite release in the affordable luxury range, because it is exactly what I asked for from Tudor. I wanted a Pelagos in a 58 case, and obviously with the Tudor bracelet, I wanted it to be adjustable. Everything that it has is everything that I asked for, and so I have no complaints. It has been the perfect companion. I have chosen to wear it over a lot of my other watches, and I have a hard time taking it off my wrist these days. So it's had a long honeymoon, and I think that that's a testament for what it does and what I like about it. It just does so perfectly. Aside from actual releases in 2022, I obviously started making videos on this channel, and I think the watch that I wanted to highlight for my year that has stood out to me is the Breitling Premier. That is not a watch that got a whole lot of press. It's a video that's actually done the poorest out of any of my reviews, and I think it's a testament to how bad some of my early videos were and how I'm still learning. The point is that that Premier is a gorgeous watch, and if I had the money, man, I would have kept it. If I could fit that into the way that I wear my watches, I definitely would have. And so that I wanted to highlight for my year. Of all the watches I brought in, that's the one that I wish I could have kept. If I had all the money in the world, that definitely would have been the one that I kept out of the ones that I obviously bought and then resold. And this year in 2022 has just been big for me in general. I'd watched videos on YouTube for several years before starting this channel, and I always considered doing it. I like video making, I like doing that stuff. And so I wanted to thank everyone that has, kind of supported this and watched these videos, watched me rant, watched me kind of poke my ideas at different things. And it's just been really enjoyable. I think this has generally been incredibly positive. The amount of people that I see repeatedly in the comments that I just have conversations with now, and I know a little bit about their tastes and their styles and their collections, has been a lot of fun. Obviously, you guys know a little bit about my plans for next year, doing a little bit more of the movement or watch service focused element of it, and generally just having more of these kinds of conversations. I want to keep this entire channel as independent as possible, so I'm not going to start selling watches at a profit in order to do that through being a watch dealer or some other form. What I want to do is provide value. This is mainly an excuse for me to be able to see all this stuff. The downside of that being that in the early days, I had to buy the watch in order to review it and then sell it. And typically I lost money on doing that transaction. And so the more people that I have subscribing, so my ask would be to subscribe, because the more people I have do that, the more people will lend me watches so I don't have to lose money doing this. And that's what's been so far. So if you could do that, that would be incredibly helpful. I really appreciate it. Other than that, I just wanted to recap this year, highlight a few things, kind of reminisce a little bit, because the year has blown by for me. It's been very fast. And there have been a lot of things that happened this year in our world, and I want to just highlight them, bring them to mind, and kind of put a little time capsule in my brain about how 2022 was and what changed. And so that way in several years I can look back and say, oh, that's right, 2022 was the GMT and bright dial year and all these other different things that came out. So that's pretty much it. Just wanted to highlight it real quick. Thanks again, guys, for watching. I appreciate it. Take care.